Give us a little bit more about
you have to do your bio. You have to kind of do your bio.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Standing at a hulking 6'10" with silver skin and glowing green eyes, Josh Kirk, filmmaker guy.
I think we have to make all guests do this in the future. That they have to intro themselves.
Welcome to the Creative Jungle Podcast, where we explore the creative process and fascinating people who have creative courage. Here are your hosts, Artie and Justin.
Welcome to the Creative Jungle Podcast. I am Artie Gold. This is Justin Andrews. On location, I think is how I'm going to put it. You're not specifically in your podcast spectacular.
Yeah, it's Justin Andrews, aka Diddy, is what Aiden calls me, like P. Diddy, circa 2002.
Wait, you've trained your son to call you P. Diddy, or is that something that just happened because you're just so fly?
I think it's the latter. Yeah, for sure.
It's probably what happened. Really excited about our first guest, Justin, because now live productions have been far and few between this past year, but we have managed as a company to safely film, and we've actually had some really exciting passion projects that we filmed this year. One of them happened because of our editor, Josh Kirk, also one of our writers, and he produced and directed and wrote a short film that he had in his mind for a very long time called Hip Cat. Josh Kirk, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Listen to that golden voice.
I mean, it's a little hard being around Josh all the time because he is like that 5-star person, right, Josh? He's
a triple threat.
He's a triple threat, I think. He definitely has, like, he's got the looks, the voice, the brain. He's got that X factor that Simon Cowell talks a lot about and creates shows about. So I haven't heard him sing, but I'm assuming you're a great singer too, Josh.
I've been hyped up this much. There's no way I can deliver.
Yeah, you kind of like the Christopher Walken of our company, right? You just got it all.
Yeah,
so.
I'm the Christopher Walken in the sense that I've seen someone kill someone else on a boat. And I haven't talked about it ever.
And you refuse to talk about it but it has made your career, so that's great. The Hip Cat short that we helped produce for you and that I was a part of was really exciting. I really enjoyed it. But talk to me a little bit about what Hip Cat was in your mind, how it got developed, and then we're going to talk about the creative process a little bit.
Cool. Yeah. The idea of it, I guess the theme of it was something I was like gravitating around for a while. Like when I was thinking about it, it was always kind of about the kind of hierarchy of art and this kind of pecking order that people have in any kind of medium, and film being one of them. So a lot of that, I mean, I guess on a larger scale also is about the perception of cool and what is and isn't hip. So I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially in like film or any medium. They might feel maybe irrelevant or not as deep as like as what like the trendsetters are doing. So I didn't really have kind of an attack for it. I just knew I wanted to satirize kind of hip people. The funny part is that the driving engine came from the quotes. So in Hip Cat, it's kind of driven by this. Basically, the quick rundown is it's an actor who visits his dealer only to get roped into a trendy dinner party full of hip socialites and artists, causing him to question his sanity and sense of cool. In that, he's the main driving engine is these quotes, and people are reading these kind of like quotes, inspirational quotes, and they get crazier and crazier. That actually came from a party I was at.
This is a real life story that inspired you.
A girl I was dating at the time invited me to this party, and it's supposed to be like this. What I was sold as like this kind of everyone standing around, kind of like a cocktail party. I don't know. And I went, and it's 20 people at 25 people at the longest dining room table I've ever seen, and everyone's sitting at this dining room table, and I'm just like, damn it, I'm stuck there. And at one point, they actually start reading inspirational quotes. And there are all these quotes on the table in front of people. So I was losing my mind because I'm sure they were meant to be, it was something nice. I'm sure they're meant to be inspirational. But I was like, I think my teeth were itching. The idea of Hip Cat, or the idea of kind of satirizing those people, was always there. But when that happened, it was really started to like click. And like, I'm sure if you saw me at the dining room table, I probably looked insane. I was just like sitting there, like grinning and trying not to say things. Yep. And absurdism is something I'm in love with from like Fellini and Mel Brooks. And to have fun, I just started making up kind of like in my own head. I just started to say like, what if that old lady says, what Australian are made of brass and copper? And that just made me laugh. And I just thought like, oh, they wouldn't even tell the difference. And I started to just project my kind of anger on hip people, I guess, or and that's kind of where it came from, I guess.
So to paint the picture a little bit for the audience out there, so HipCat, we filmed at a really eclectic house that Josh located in the east side of Providence, Rhode Island. It was really like just had crazy art everywhere, crazy. It's a perfect place. I mean, I don't think you could have found a better place to film HipCat, to tell you the truth. It was great. And then if you picture this actor that he's talking about gets invited to this party, and in the party are these very eclectic people sitting around the table. And what Josh had was like these scrolls that were rolled up, and each person had to unroll the scroll and read one of the quotes. And the quotes they just got crazier and crazier. Like give an example of one of the quotes, Josh, so people get.
Yeah, they would be like a normal quote, like from Thomas Jefferson. Is like, the harder I work, the more fun I seem to have, and like things that if you hear them,
they might seem real, right?
Yeah, I mean they are real. All those original quotes are real, like the Thomas Jefferson one, and those kind of things. But then it starts to go, Australian is made of brass and copper. A family of had sex with my face, then got that whole space shuttle thing going. John F. Kennedy. So like the things are obviously like meant to be absurd.
Aside from HipCat, because like the production of it is cool, and obviously people will be able to watch the film, and we don't want to give away all of that. I think this is about the creative process and hearing like, okay, so you're at a dinner party. We've all been there, and you're outclassed, which it doesn't take much. Walk us through like how the wheels start turning after that dinner party. Like, did you start jotting notes like in your phone there, or did you get home and say, I'm laying down a script right now? I think it's worth noting, like, you don't just have HipCat in the wings. You have, like, the way that you work is like you have probably 50 ideas. Talk through like your primordial soup of ideas that's just like waiting in the wings, and how HipCat even like rose to be among the top and something that you actually wanted to progress.
I'm mainly writing feature scripts. So those are like my bigger kind of boats that I build. And then the smaller things like shorts or comedies or vignettes are constantly always happening. And if they have kind of traction, if they have like, if they get a laugh or they get like, a good reaction, that's the ones I pursue. So when kind of exploring HipCat, what got its legs is when I started to like really crack up. Like, it sounds so stupid to say you're laughing at your own stuff, but I always make things that I want to watch. So when I started to see HipCat actually form and be funny, and I actually started to show it to, that's when I have like a second draft, I usually start to show it to people when it's cohesive. And when that got a crazy reaction, when that actually people were like surprised that like, oh, you can do this, or is this gonna be allowed that you can say these things or do these things? That's when I started to go, oh, okay, cool. I'll pursue this one. And this one will be in the front for a while. I'll build this and complete this. So it started to be a viable thing when it started to get big reactions. I always tend to show it to about like 8 different people. That's a funny thing Mark Twain said, that like he likes to show it to a smart person, a romantic person, an idiot, and all these things. He just basically means to show it to every different kind of person you can.
What's your process to like jump back and forth between things? Because I know you like to write a lot, and I think what Justin was asking is like, what drove HipCat to the front of everything? But you do write a lot, so like, what's your process for like trying to balance that?
Well, I think the process is actually started to form the last couple of years, where I have a really good balance now, where it's a huge focus on a feature that I'm doing. So the feature is the priority. So I think at that time, I think I might have been writing Don Hustle, which was a neo-noir about a private eye turned repo man. It's a comedy. And, I write that when I'm feeling it. Like, I can't force myself to write. I never sit down to just write stuff. That'll never happen. And it'll happen anywhere. Like, literally, I'll just be walking and then a whole conversation will happen, where oftentimes I don't think I often can't take credit for it, because I feel like it's just happening. Like, it's just kind of happening to my head. So a whole dialogue will happen and I'll have to like write it down. And that'll be usually how I write something. Or I'll find a character's voice that'll sound really fun, and that'll help me write. If that's not working, if a feature's not playing for me at that time, like a song, if it doesn't feel good to hear, another thing will come up inevitably. And HipCat was a thing that kind of keeps pinging. It kept kind of like coming back up because it was funny to me. It was just so weird. So it felt very much like my style. It felt like if you had to sum me up very quickly in a short film, you say HipCat. So that's what kind of made it come to the forefront for me. It was just like, okay, I need to show a signature here, and this is very close to it.
You were showing it to the inner circle, the initial 8 on, this first pass. And they were saying things like, wow, you can say that? It doesn't sound like they were saying like, whoa, Josh, this is brilliant. They were saying like, are you sure you can make this thing?
Well,
so talk to us about like that vetting process and like how you then go from feedback from people to still making sure it's your idea. Like, what is that initial 8 process that you've learned from Mark Twain? And that's my son. He's lipping and niding and slight. What are you doing? He's zinking and ziding.
Oh, that's what you got to do.
As we all are in life.
That's exactly Josh's process, by the way. He zinks and he slides.
That showing it to different people is always going to elicit different reactions because those people are very different. And that's what's fun. You're basically seeing an audience, it's like a test audience almost of people you value, not respect their opinion. But they're
do you value them, Josh?
I do. I think they're all very different. And like, here's an example, like, another filmmaker could be impressed by it. A musician could be, could find it hilarious. And like my mom could find it offensive. And I think by that combination lock, I have something I really like.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I always have to offend my mom or something. Like,
yeah, that's your goal, right?
It's cool to see the different reactions.
So we talk a lot about with our company, something I try to live and breathe, which is creative courage, right? And I think you kind of seen it from our side of the coin, which is you have to do things that are in the lane, especially when you're dealing with corporate work. But when you're outside of that lane, there's that creative courage. And what I mean by creative courage is, and I see this a lot with your writing, Josh, and specifically like HipCat, there has to be times and moments where like only you are laughing. Maybe you're the only one that gets it. Talk to me about like sticking to your creativity, sticking to what you wrote in your mind, what's on the script, kind of having this idea of what you want it to be. And you are showing it to a number of people, but regardless of their reaction, you still are kind of like, this is how I want it. This is what I see in my mind. Talk to me about what that means to you as a creator and a writer.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things that people overlook is like that a lot of directing is like, is what you just said. It's like you have an idea. It's like you have a visualization of something and you have to convince a bunch of other people that this is like, hey, this is going to work. And this is what it looks like. So you need to do all these things to help me make this in my head, what this is going to happen. And sticking by your guns with that is like one of the most important things because a lot of people compromise as it goes by because I always think a horse, what is it? There's a great quote where it's a camel is a horse made by committee, which means if you have a lot of people trying to make a horse, odds are you're just going to end up with a camel. Because it's never, someone's going to go, oh, I want a longer neck. Oh, I want it to have a hump. I want it to have this. It's like, okay, we're really losing sight of the horse here.
Which is how the platypus got invented, right?
Yeah, this is way too many people chiming in here. That's a big thing about like filmmakers, that a lot of them can be seen as like dictators or this or that. It's just like, well, I mean, it's a hard medium because it encompasses so many others, but you have to basically be like the composer for all of them. So I guess another cheesy metaphor would be that it's like a pirate ship or something like that, the captain's trying to convince everybody. And we build this boat for a reason. We assemble the ship for a reason and the crew and everybody. I just got to get to this X on this map and we'll all get there. We all get this. If it works, then it could be treasure. Like if it's actually, conceived properly, then why wouldn't it be? Let's just get there. Let's get there on time.
As you started, so that's the side of the critique of like, hey, you got to stick to your guns. But the other side of the coin is like going from those initial conversations and your mom saying like, I don't know, or someone else saying a really good idea. What's your process for incorporating good ideas and then Kirkifying them and saying like, okay, this was HipCat initial script, but like these are comments I heard that I really like. Like, what's your process for moving from initial concept, getting critique, getting feedback, to tweaking it before we're even really at the point that we have obviously a final script?
A big thing I learned from an author, Elmore Leonard, who's a really great American author. He just had like a punchy kind of fun dialogue, but he also had, and his characters were so fun. But a big thing he always had was like, what's making it different? And that's something I learned after I made my first independent film, Nothins, which was like kind of like my student film, is that yeah, it's great. In my opinion, I like it, and it had its faults obviously because it's like a student film. But the biggest thing I learned from it is to be different and to like swing for the fences and ideas. So for me, it's like if it's critiqued and it's cool and it's good, that's great. And it could be proofed by a bunch of people that could like it. But for me, if it's not different, if it's not new, if it's not bringing something new to the genre anymore, or if it's not bringing something new to the table, then what's the point? Like, I don't care anymore if it's not a challenge.
And that's an interesting concept, because especially a company our size or independent film companies, it's hard to have that ability to separate failure from success, right? So you have another short, it's like a very short film you did called Dog Bite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that will give you the link for that as well. That didn't necessarily turn out exactly the way you wanted, I think, but you're still working on it. But what's the mentality when something doesn't turn out the way you wanted? Do you have the mentality of just kind of moving on, or do you just, does it egg you to like finish it and make it, or do you just take it as a lesson learned? And what's that emotion like for you?
Yeah, that's true. They're all different kinds of things. They're all different kinds of like hits or losses. That happens all different ways in filmmaking. With No Nothins, I know that like the bigger thing that irks me when I watch it is like, man, we shot that in 14 days with like 60K with 6 people and 7 crew members. Like, I was stretched so thin. I look at that and go, yeah, that was the biggest problem. I look at Dog Bite and it's like, that's really, the initial idea wasn't the right idea, but Roy Power, the editor of it, found the actual, like, no, it should be this way. It's like, damn, you're right, Roy. And that one has a lot more legs and seeing, like, they're both very different. Like, that one you can find in post-production, whereas No Nothins was like in production, I just didn't have as many bullets as I needed, but I love it because it's all a learning process. Like, I look at all of them as, even if it was like a loss, like a bad loss, it's like, wow, what a great education. On-field experience like that is going to teach you years what you could, like what only took like months.
Mistakes are a good marker for trying something different and being uncomfortable. Talk to that a little bit more. Like, how many ideas, even in like the ideation phase, in your initial scripting phase, you look back at and say like, wow, that's terrible. What's your process for like letting the cream rise to the crop and making sure like it is? There are artists who like they sketch every day and they have a process for sketching every day. Like, how much work goes into a lot of these other Josh Kirk ideas that, they might never see the light of day and they're just a pile of them.
I guess my thought process is probably different. That helps me. Like, if I write something for like 30 days, like a pilot script to something, like a 30-page something, and it doesn't go anywhere, I don't look at it like, oh, that's a failure, that's that. It's like, oh, cool, that was like I was at college for that thing for those amount of days. Like, it's all just like working out essentially. So although there's no rhyme or reason to when or how I do it, I guess sometimes I'm constantly just doing it. I'm constantly shifting from one script to another, and what makes it fun, or it makes the ones kind of rise, it makes the ones I like. It's weird, I guess. It's sometimes it's a song that fits with them, or like a character that speaks a certain way, but it's something I think the thing that I can pinpoint is I hadn't seen it before. Like, it's something like, oh, that's weird. Like, what is this? Because I haven't seen a short like this before. Why does it sound like this? Or why does it act the way it acts? So I like to explore things like that. So I know, like I mentioned, Elmore Leonard, the author, inverted storytelling is something I'm very attracted to. It's kind of going against expectations. And I think in filmmaking, that's a huge thing of like reinventing something. And that's what I've always been attracted to. So if a script to me is new and it might reinvent a character or a way you look at something, then that's kind of what's going to make it different for me. Like, I learned that after No Nothins. If something's not completely new, then I don't want to put my time into it anymore.
And that's not to say that you can't be successful with doing something you're good at, right? I mean, we talk a lot about Martin Scorsese. He's really good at mafia movies, right? He's good at a genre.
That's your niche,
and that's his niche, and he does it. And we talk, even like when you take it to the M. Shyamalan level, where all of his fans are waiting for the twist, right? The twist is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so that's been the shoulder that he cries on. And even Quentin Tarantino, who we joked around about at the beginning of their show, that is just like his niche is like messing around with timelines and like history and like, that kind of propaganda. So you also mentioned a couple of things that I thought were interesting. Was one of my comedy heroes is Steve Martin. And Steve Martin actually said, I think he said something close to you. If you go to his masterclass, and which we're not they don't sponsor us, but they might as well, right? His masterclass, he says, people are going to say it's not funny or funny. If it makes me laugh, then I think it's funny. Then I trust my humor. And I think that's kind of, if you want to be an absurdist, like you said, you have to have that mentality, correct?
Yeah, I think if you're worried about what other people think or what other people think is funny, then that's such a waste of time. I mean, the amount of times you have to consider everyone's feelings or thoughts is insane. So I sometimes think it's almost like sometimes people would think it's like, oh, that's like a heightening of comedy or heightening of. Sometimes I think I'm just just pretty simple. Like I'll just make the thing I think is funny because I want to laugh at it.
Yeah. The process of involving multiple people like we do versus you by yourself in your bedroom trying to write something, or maybe even the segue to that, like when's there a time to do it on your own? When's there a time to involve everybody? What kind of advice would you give people about that creative process?
I think you're going to always need that kind of fire or that passion to do it alone. Like that, if you're in filmmaking and you can't do it like alone, or you can't approach it by yourself, I don't know, it's like a tough business because how many actors go at it alone and how many writers go at it alone? And, I think you need to start off that way to learn. Like I learned a lot alone. I learned a lot in writing and directing by doing all the things myself. I got to learn and respect all the different things. I respected actors so much when I learned all the crazy they got to go through. And it sounds like they have a cushy job, but it's like, they're putting themselves out there. So you have a lot of empathy when you get to be in all those positions, or when you get to start from the bottom like that. But I got to say, the teamwork and being with people like that and like-minded people is the greatest thing. That is what filmmaking is. And if you can't learn to be in a team, or if you can't lead a team, then you got to get out of filmmaking, because that's the most important thing. And Animus, I think, is that production of Hipcat was such a finely oiled machine. It was so well oiled, so finely tuned. It was awesome.
Going from like this lone situation in your mind to like this democracy, how do you balance that? Because I do think that when you have the kind of mind that you have, there's got to be times where you're like, all right, Artie, shut up. I like that idea, but we're definitely sticking to what I have on the page here, versus like a team of people going like, Josh, we really don't think this is the right way to go because you might land in jail. So, there's that balance there. And how do you balance that? Because I know the kind of mind that you have, there is probably that struggle between trying to make everybody happy, but also sticking to your guns and being, this is my creative process. This is what I have in my head. This is what I'd like to see get done.
I come from the school of thought of, clearly there's a chain of command, but there should be a insane amount of respect and empathy happening in a film set, because there's a lot of different, it's not a military operation, it's an artistic endeavor. So but there needs to be this kind of respect as far as ideas go, and a chain of command as far as if me and Andy, we'll be on set and he knows we have enough pre-production meetings, he knows what my vision is and I've explained it to him enough, and we're not going to step on each other's toes. He knows that this is how I want to see it, and we'll be on set. And I know in Hipcat at one point in a smash cut scene, he goes, okay, so this will be on a tripod. And I go, oh, I was thinking kind of handheld because it'd still be kind of, it's going to get ramped up pretty quick. He goes, I know, but if you're smash cutting, that comedic take on a tripod be funnier. And I said, damn it, you're right. I just immediately, if he's telling, it's like the same thing with the military. If he's telling me those mortars won't go that far, I'm going to believe him. You know what I mean? Because that's what he's an expert at.
I think what Artie hit on was spot on to a lot of what this is about, which is it's really hard to learn if all you're doing is writing. And there are people that obviously that's all they do. They write and then they pass scripts and they sell their scripts, but they have to learn what works, what gets approved, what it looks like when it's actually on camera, versus this, learning really fast and saying I can play with ideas and I can have failures and I can learn from failures and stand up and say, wow, what can I do moving forward? Or what really worked here, what didn't work here? Learning both about the creativity and how something turns out in the finished product, and also learning about the process along the way. So just this idea of what you brought to a lot of the people is that ambition to move faster and to try and be okay breaking things and be okay if not everything works. And that's just part of it. And if something does work, latch onto it more, explore it further, and take a deeper dive.
Yeah. One of my favorite, it's a quote that plays in my head sometimes, is a Chinese proverb, but it says, to avoid being criticized, say nothing, do nothing. So it means if you don't want to, you don't want to be criticized, then why don't you just stay out of the game? And
I think that's something that I know I've struggled with personally. And I think a lot of people in this industry struggle with is the criticism, being judged. I think that's where we came down with our philosophy of creative courage, right? It's the ability to say like, hey, listen, we need to be a little courageous with our creativity if we're going to move forward, because otherwise it's just like that proverb you just said, we're just going to be invisible and we're not going to make anything of worth, then we're not going to move forward. So I appreciate your time, because I know you're really busy trying to get other things done for us, Josh, but seeing that we said, hey, can you come to the podcast, and you don't have the ability to say no. No, I'm just kidding.
It's time for the bonus features.
Well, we're going to move on to our final section, which is the bonus features, Josh. This is where we ask you random questions. You can choose not to answer them, but you're going to answer them because I know that you'll have a good answer for all of them. I'll start this, and I'm going to ask you to think about this deeply, even though I've already given you one. Josh, Kirk, is it true you have no middle name?
Well, if you say my middle name, I will go back to the spirit dimension. So I probably shouldn't divulge it.
Because I've given you the middle name of Tiberius.
Oh yeah, Josh Tiberius. Yeah, I'm Captain Kirk. Yeah.
Are you opposed to your middle name? That's my question.
No. My middle name is actually, I say I'll go back to the spirit dimension. All right, it's Robert.
Okay. You feel like Josh Robert Kirk makes you sound like a serial killer? Is that why you don't want to use it?
If it's just Josh Robert, then definitely. Joshua Robert Kirk just makes me sound like a boring author. J.R. Kirk makes me sound like an oil man, so I'll take that.
Here's a good one for you, Josh. If you could be the director on any feature film, what would you have liked to be the director of?
Probably Booty Call with Jamie Foxx.
And particularly why? Because it's such a cult classic? Or
I think it's Vivica A. Fox was in it, and at that time I was very close to trying to kidnap her. So yeah, Booty Call.
I was expecting Pulp Fiction, but Booty Call was right up there.
No, he did that. I couldn't make that. I can't make that better. I could maybe make Booty Call better. I don't know.
Because my back in that genre, have you ever watched I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker?
Yeah, of course.
I'd say like that would be the one I would want to direct.
Yeah.
That was all. And my last question for the bonus feature comes from our producer Mark, which I think is a fascinating one. Is if you could be a child of two filmmakers, Josh, who would they be and why?
That's hard.
Who are you the love child of?
And where would they conceive you?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I know. It'd be weird anyway. I'd probably say, I'm obviously a big one is like Leone or Tarantino, because I love that kind of composition. And I love Fellini. I don't know, Mel Brooks is up there too. It'd have to be probably
I mean, the love child of Quentin Tarantino and Mel Brooks would be kind of how I view you.
Yeah, that might be closer, to be honest, because I can't not be silly. It's hard. Like Leone's pretty serious dude, and Fellini's pretty serious at some points. But yeah, I'd say Mel Brooks and QT would be great. I wouldn't mind them getting together and having sex.
Well, I wasn't taking it that far. There are other ways.
Oh, okay, never mind.
I mean, there are other DNA things that we can do, Josh, to get you there.
Make that happen.
I appreciate your time on this podcast, and I know Justin does as well. I really appreciate your creative mind. And
someone's at my door. Hold on one second. Oh, yeah, just come in. Well, howdy. How you guys doing? You guys recording a podcast in here? Hey, listen, buddy, you gotta get out of here. All right, listen, guys, I gotta go. This guy, I don't know, some guys.
Obviously.
The Creative Jungle Podcast is a product of Animus Studios. Explore our creative process at animusstudios.com.